welcome all to this special event on the Center of Expertise of Global Governance and your research. My name is Barbara Varvas. I'm a lecturer in multi-level regulation and director of the Center of Expertise on Global Governance at the Hague University of Applied Sciences THUAS. Together with Dr. Sylvia Berg, I will be a co-host of this event today. Sylvia Berg is a senior researcher in our Center on Global Governance, and she's also associate professor at Erasmus University Institute for Social Studies. Let me start by saying just a few words about the whole Employment Network event, and also by thanking the organizers for giving us the opportunity to present the research and expertise of our center. The Employment Network event is organized for the 10th time this year. It is organized by Mr. Aurélien Lorange and the Law Program, International and European Bachelor of Law. Mr. Lorange is supported by a fantastic team of people from law, and the event is open also to students from other programs, including European Studies, International Public Management, and others. So today what we want to do, maybe before that, we would also like to encourage you to familiarize yourself with the whole program of the Employment Network event, because it's a very rich program. And the grand finale will be taking place this Friday. It involves an interview of a member of the European Commission in charge of education, research and innovation, Her Excellency Maria Gabriel. This interview will be by students, Dean Lidwin Bremer, and the Vice President of the University Board, Mr. Rajesh Raval. So we warmly invite you to this event, but also to other events this week. I think that's for now it, and now over to you, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barbara, for this introduction. I'll just briefly explain the program. So we're having first a presentation by Barbara Varvas on the center itself, and then we have 4 presentations on our research, on different, giving insights or a snapshot on our different research projects that we are conducting presently. Christine Tremblay, who's a lecturer in law at THUAS, will talk about women and youth as the focal point of the research group UN Studies in Peace and Justice. And then it's my turn to talk about social accountability projects, and as an example of multi-level governance and maybe good governance. And then we have Dr. Anna Machak, who's a lecturer also at THUAS in security and safety management, if I'm say this correctly, who will talk about policing Hurricane Katrina, the Western Africa Ebola crisis, and also the Fukushima nuclear disaster, and about multi-level regulation of policing such human emergencies. And finally, but not least, of course, we have Tolgan Robin, who's senior lecturer also at THUAS in European Studies, on how to create a triple helix collaboration on international trade in The Hague. And I'm personally excited to find out more about all of these topics.
Thank you. So welcome again. I'm very happy to see that we have quite a few students who are interested in collaborating with the Center of Expertise. So what I planned today, I have 20 slides, but please don't feel discouraged. I will go through them quite quickly, also not to overwhelm you with the information. What I would like to do for this start is to tell you who we are, what we do, and how you can get involved in the Center of Expertise. Let me start by explaining what Centers of Expertise do at THUAS. I think it's in order to mention that Centers of Expertise are a pretty young creatures. They were established at THUAS in April 2020, so it was our first birthday actually on April. We didn't celebrate it properly. This just reminds me. Centers of Expertise consist of a number of research groups groups which conduct research on specific themes with a societal impact or of societal relevance. We conduct our research with students and also in cooperation with external partners such as government agencies, business communities. As I mentioned, we look together for answers to social issues, and we want to contribute to a stronger and more innovative society, and of course, to improve our education. So,
Barbara, sorry, just very quickly, do you mind putting it to full screen? Then we can see, I think, even more, if that's possible. Sorry to interrupt.
I did it on purpose. I thought it would be quicker because I yeah. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for encouraging me to challenge my IT skills. It wasn't that bad as I thought it would be. Yeah, so we have these 7 centers of expertise established. We are one of them on global governance, but I think it's also nice to mention our colleagues who work very hard on developing research culture at THUAS together with the faculties and students. These are the centers of expertise on cybersecurity, digital operations and finance, governance of urban transitions, health innovation, global and inclusive learning, and Mission Zero, on top of the one on global governance. You can find information about the centers of expertise on the landing page of THUAS, and I really encourage you to read more about the fascinating projects our colleagues and ourselves are conducting. So who we are organized at the different levels, I would say. Let me start with the management level. We of course, have a leading lecturer who is myself. Then we also have a program coordinator. Until the last month, it was Remel de Vert, who is still working now in the center, but in a different capacity. But from early June, we will welcome a new colleague who will become our program coordinator, Maike Delors. And we also have a fantastic management assistant, Deborah Spinabelli. That on the management level. Then we also have 3 research groups that are headed by lectors. And of course, lectors also form part of the steering management group for the center, but mostly they are responsible for scientific development of the research groups and the center. Let me start with Dr. Mendelce van Kulen, who is a lector in the changing role of Europe. Let me move this screen so that you can see Mendelce's picture too. Then we also have a lector of UN Studies in Peace and Justice, who is Professor Dr. Alana O'Malley. Alana O'Malley is a special chair that is shared between Leiden University, the City of The Hague, and THUAS. So this is a very unique position to actually work on societal issues and studies in peace and justice from the perspective of our center, but also from the perspective of an academic institution such as Leiden University and the City of The Hague. And finally, we also have myself, and I'm also I'm having different hats, I would say, in the center, one of which is being a lector of multi-level regulation and alternative dispute resolution. And maybe just a short explanation what multi-level regulation is, because not everyone perhaps is familiar with this term. Multi-level regulation concerns different actors and different processes through which rules are made. So we're interested in understanding how rules relate to people, to citizens, to society, to governments, but also private regulators that are many in today's contemporary regulation. We also have about 22 researchers in the center, including 2 senior researchers. This is, of course, Sylvia and also Tamara Takac, who is coordinating the project on the Academy of Global Governance Innovators. We collaborate with faculties and educational programs because the main mission of the center is, of course, to also help improve education. We mostly collaborate with 2 faculties now, Management and Organization and Public Management, Law and Safety, which translate into the following educational programs: European Studies. Tolgan Raben, who is our speaker today, is a representative of this program. Then also Public Management, which comes in English English and the Dutch. Law, of course, and Christine Tremblay is representing law, and SSMS, and whose representative today is Anna Matczak. But it doesn't mean that that's it and that we want to collaborate only with those programs. We are interested, in fact, in a multidisciplinary research and in working with students from many programs and also researchers from other educational programs and faculties. So our mission is to increase the understanding by future professionals of how global governance works in practice. I think that it's very important to stress our orientation towards professionals and future professionals who are students, because our center, which is interested in applied research in global governance, foremostly wants to make an impact through educating and helping understand global governance by those who will work or currently work in fields that are of relevance to global governance. Now, to sketch a little bit the problem around which our research program is drafted, I would like to pose this very general question: how inclusive and implied is global governance? And as you can see to the left, here are two pictures which probably do not seem too inclusive. You can see this building that is behind the wall. You can see mostly men, but also women wearing suits, presenting themselves at the conference for climate change. So that's how we associate the global governance today. And I think it's a correct association. Global governance is not necessarily inclusive and implied, and we want to change it. So we want to, and these are another pictures that show maybe the top-down understanding of global governance. So what we are interested in is what other actors say about global governance and what they do in the field of global governance. Here you can see an example of an NGO who is focused on global reforestation, and we try to reach out through our research to those so-called underrepresented actors who may not necessarily be immediately associated with global governance challenges, but they do things that matter for global governance on a daily basis. For example, the aforementioned NGOs have their own plan on how to stop climate change, and this plan seems to be quite relatable. For example, it includes learning how to recycle properly, supporting women and educating girls, using renewable energy sources, and so on and so forth. So we also look, in order to be critical, we also look at those who are not necessarily supportive of global governance. You can see that there are many trends in many countries now towards nationalization or focusing more on solutions within national borders. And we are also interested in those who express so-called local resistance to global challenges. And you can see people, even in the Netherlands, who don't want to build windmills or solar panels on their territory, or who don't want to take part in abandoning gas and oil. So we are interested in learning from all these experiences or all these approaches, whether positive or negative, to global governance, and we're trying to shift towards more inclusive global governance. And what is quite important to stress, that in finding solutions for global challenges, citizens, companies, and local civil servants are just as important actors for us as diplomats and world leaders. Why? Because they actually do change global governance as we speak. So what we are trying to do is to move from the left to the right, to move from less diverse to more diverse group of global governance practitioners, to maybe making global governance more local, to understanding more local solutions to global challenges. That's what our research program is about. We call it a multi-actor and solution-driven approach. That means that we study global problems with the people directly involved in those problems. We are interested and we study what those people do, how they do it, and how their practices can be improved. This, as I mentioned already, allows us to unpack global governance into more local practices of new and underrepresented actors and to develop new collaborative solutions to global problems through communities of practice, qualitative research methods such as interviews, surveys, discussion groups, archival work, and citizen science. Of course, global governance is a very broad field, so we want to stay relevant. This is why our research program is periodically reviewed to make sure that we are focusing on the challenges that are of most relevance to contemporary citizens, societies, but also future professionals. But our fields of expertise navigate around our research groups that concerns European studies and public administration, peace and justice, multi-level regulation, and alternative dispute resolution, but also development governance. Sylvia will give you a presentation in this field, if I'm not mistaken, climate change, women's rights, diversity, and inclusion. And it's not an exhaustive list. Of course, we do have our experts who work on these within these fields, but if you are interested in different global challenges, or if you think you could contribute in any other field, we're always willing to learn from others. So let me highlight a few projects very briefly to give you some sense of what we're doing. Sylvia Berg was just awarded a grant from the City of The Hague for her project on the effects of heat waves of vulnerable population groups in The Hague. Perhaps she will refer to this project also a little bit in her presentation, so I would leave it like that. But what is also important is that we developed the community of practice on global governance this year, through which we want to connect people who are interested in global challenges and global governance, maybe from a less traditional perspective, as I mentioned. And we welcome in our community of practice lecturers, practitioners, students, all those for whom global governance matters. So if you are interested, you feel free also to contact us and join one of our sessions. We have a number of research projects at lectoraten level. Lectorat translates into a research group in Dutch. For example, we have a project by Mendelche van Kulen, Europe as an Opportunity, which tries to develop EU professionals, or tries to this project helps especially municipal employees to navigate around very complex, sometimes complex EU regulations. We also have a project for lawyers and arbitrators, but also mediators, which concerns trust, independence, impartiality, and accountability of legal professionals. We work with legal professionals to discuss rule of law issues and how they could be improved in Europe. And finally, we also have here as a highlight an ERC starting grant awarded to our professor in UN Peace and Justice Studies, Alana O'Malley, that attracts actually a lot of attention from also students. This project concerns invisible histories of the UN and the Global South. And this project also relates to the UN Impact Youth, of which I will speak in a moment. So just to finalize, because I know that I'm already probably behind 10 minutes, but it's a very important finale of my presentation. It's actually the most important given our mission, students' involvement in our center, and probably the most interesting for you if you are a student. Currently, we have 9 student assistants working within our center, including Johanna, who is so kind to help us out with today's event. But we also have an informal group of students that are affiliated with different research groups and who are interested in our projects and contribute to our research program ad hoc. What we have in the pipeline is the project on the Academy of Global Governance Innovators, through which we want to further connect students, professionals, and lecturers, researchers. This project will start as a pilot at the end of September. Soon you will be able to read more about it on our website, because we will start recruiting students. But essentially the idea is that we want to close the participation gap for students in global governance and enable opportunities for students to actually get involved in solving global problems through work with practitioners and through research. So if you are interested and if you want to innovate global governance further and want to tell us how to innovate it, because we may think we know the solutions, but you are the future professionals who will have all the answers, feel free to subscribe to the Academy and be part of this project. We also contribute to minors, make peace not war, and dispute resolution, and hopefully more also in the future. And here are also other student-driven projects. They already mentioned UN Youth Impact, through which you can also try to affect how global challenges are solved. Then we also have Trust Mediators Comenius project that we will be launching hopefully this Friday, so stay tuned. The project concerns intercultural dispute resolution, and we are looking for contributors, researchers, so-called citizen scientists, who will be sharing their cultural observations with us on the so-called wisdom of the crowd on dispute resolution. Maybe it sounds a little bit mystique, but if you are interested, we will be launching the website, and I hope you will know about this project more soon. And last but not least, we have Global Challenges in 365 Days, which is the project through which students chronicle different events in global governance and global challenges. And after a year, we want to create a booklet based on this project that will actually sketch the next steps for us regarding the student-driven research in global governance. So I will stop here, because we will move back to the slide on how to get involved, and I give now the floor to Sylvia, I suppose, who will further probably give the floor to Christine. Thank you very much for now. If you have, of course, any questions, short ones for now, let me know.
I'd like to hand over to Christine Chamblay, who I already introduced. So the floor is yours for 10 minutes if possible, so we can have more time for interaction. Thank you.
Thank you. I did tape myself, and I do it in 8 minutes. But the only thing which takes me time is to share. Okay, there we go.
You can also make it full screen if you like.
Yes, I will. Yes. Is it good? You all see it? Okay, so as had been said, I am a lecturer at law, but I also do research for the research group on UN studies in peace and justice with lecturer Professor Dr. Alana O'Malley. The research group has different focal points, but I will not mention them all today. I'm going to focus on two. The one I'm involved with, and another one, youth, which I've been doing some activities in that theme of the research group. So we start with women and peace building. The idea behind this research team is to examine women's involvement in three key areas of peace and conflict: conflict prevention, peacekeeping, and the post-conflict of peacemaking, which we also call post-conflict reconstruction. This theme draws on the Secretary General emphasis on the role of women in conflict prevention, and on the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, which has as starting point the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. The central research question of this area of research is, what is the role of women in building a sustainable peace? Some of my colleagues are researching different aspects of that question. Some of them look at female peacekeeper, other ones at indigenous women and their struggle against extractive economies and climate change in conflict areas. Other ones on the contribution of women as agent of peace and their leadership in peace building. And on my part, I focus on peace conflict reconstruction and more specifically on accountability mechanism for sexual violence and gender-based crime committed during an armed conflict, which is actually one of the pillars, the prosecution of those crimes of the Women, Peace and Security agenda. I look at like the role play in the prosecution of those crimes by international criminal law. I'm researching how women and feminist lobby are influencing the shaping of those prosecution of sexual violence and gender-based crime in international criminal law. And while I'm doing that, I'm also telling the stories of influential women, especially from the global South, who lobby against sexual violence and gender-based crime and play a crucial role in creating a better gender inclusive international law system. So that's for the area of research of women and peace building. I move on now to the youth, which is also a very important theme within the research group. And the project that we have with the youth focus on working with the youth at two levels, school levels and university level. I've been involved a little bit with the later, with students at the university level. And the idea is to discuss with students what the UN means for them, and to organize activities with different students associations, including the UN Youth Impact that Barbara just mentioned, around sustainable development goals, in hope of fostering a sustainable network among the youth over time. I've been involved with some of the activities, as I said, of this branch of our research, and I'm going to give you a few examples. One of them was last fall. We organized in the context of the 75th anniversary of the UN, an event in which we discussed with the youth how do they envisage, how do they were seeing the next 25 years of the UN. And we had different breakout room, and I facilitate one of them in which I with the students, the women and girls gap, and like how could we close the gap, this gender gap. I also, with the UN Youth Impact last November, organized a webinar on COVID-19 and gender, in which we discussed the pandemic, and we tried to look if the pandemic did derail all the progress which had been made on gender equality, which is SDG number 5. Especially in respect to violence against women. And another last example of this engagement that we have with the youth is a roundtable that I chair, which was organized again by the UN Youth Impact. So I really recommend you, if you're students in the audience, to follow them on LinkedIn or on Facebook, because they do organize amazing event. And it was the idea of that roundtable was to discuss the youth as agents of change, and to see how can we capitalize on youth resilience and translate their energy into political change. Finally, hope it's working. Yes, I just want to mention one more activities that I've been involved with in the context of engaging with students. And I organized this activity in collaboration with the Center on Global Governance the past month. And it's a student group, a student reading group on diversity. What we did for 7 weeks is that like I engaged with students in a dialogue on different aspects of diversity. You see the different themes that we talked about. And this dialogue started always with a reading, an assigned reading on the theme of the week. And I want to mention it because I would like you to keep an eye open in the next academic year, because we plan to continue this reading group, and we will be happy to have more students join in the dialogue. And you see below, if you want, later on you have a question or you want more information about the reading group or the or a research group, then do not hesitate to email me. And thank you. I stop sharing.
Great, thank you so much, Christine. Okay. Good. Yeah, so this is research that I've sort of been engaged in before joining the Center of Expertise, but which I'm continuing currently, and also which I think is a nice example of sort of multi-level governance and sort of how these global models are landing at the local level. And so, yeah, social accountability is an interesting concept. It's basically how citizens can hold the governments to account in between elections. So apart from voting, what else can you do? And the World Bank's definition is actually quite technocratic. It's about the extent and capability of citizens to hold the state accountable and make it responsive to their needs. So there's this needs element, which you can say maybe it's subjective in a way, because who determines what these needs are and how they should be responded to? And I thought that for the lawyers among us, it would actually be nicer. And also I prefer this definition by academics, which is more about an effort to hold public officials to account for the provision of public goods, which are actually existing state obligations. So it's not a voluntary sort of thing just to be nice for your citizens, but it's actually something that people are entitled to, and that maybe that has a legal backing of some sort. And I find that interesting because, as we will see, this is sort of something that the aid industry, the World Bank, and others are a bit afraid of getting into this, because it's more political. It's people can actually mobilize to claim their rights, and it's not something that a lot of these development actors are maybe that familiar with or happy with, because they're not supposed to, especially these big donors, are not supposed to be politically involved or interfering in some of the countries in which they work. But anyway, people are very optimistic about social accountability as something that will solve all the problems we have. There will be less corruption. There will be more empowered citizens, and the relationship between state and society will also improve. And there is a role here for external actors, NGOs as intermediaries between the state and the society. But there is also a focus on communities, and I will show you why. And this is just one of the tools, community scorecards. There are many tools or mechanisms that fall under this social accountability label. You can also think of public hearings, other type of sort of moments in which citizens can evaluate or feedback to the government authorities at different levels, what they think of service provision, and holding them to account. But this community scorecards is something I found fascinating, because it's really quite a practical tool, and which is actually deployed in many contexts. And I heard a rumor, I'm not sure if it's true, but that CARE, which is a big global NGO, has actually patented this approach, and it started in Malawi in the early 2000s, and the World Bank has taken it up, and many other donors. And so basically it's about the fact that the community can score the level of service provision by service providers. So the community assesses, how good is our school, and we actually, and the community also decides on indicators, what is important for us, in terms of, is it the quality of the teacher, that the teacher shows up on time, that the school is clean, or and then at the same time or a little bit afterwards, the providers themselves also self-evaluate, and they score themselves according to the same indicators. And then that's where it gets really exciting, is where you have an interface meeting, as it's called, where these two sides come together. So the community will be in the same room as the teachers and the school directors and as the doctors, and they will discuss, look, this is our assessment of you, sort of how do you react to that, why do you think that you're doing so much better? Maybe because that's often the case, of course, that providers might be more generous when giving themselves scores. And then there's a committee that is created to follow up on a sort of action plan. Well, what do we do to get the school or to get the health center perform better, and who is going to do what? And there are different ways of institutionalizing this. And that's often where I think the problem is, and at least in the case studies that I found, like who takes responsibility, how is this financed, etc. And so the assumptions behind this approach, as you can imagine, are quite wild, and that the state is actually prepared to be scrutinized by citizens, and that even sort of higher up, the Ministry of Education can actually exert control over the teachers, for example, in some villages, that this line, the internal accountability, is also happening, administrative accountability. And of course, in many countries, authoritarian conditions, or regimes, the state is not maybe prepared to be scrutinized by citizens. And that this will actually, that giving this feedback or evidence will actually lead to resource reallocations, so that you will get more money going to education, for example. That's also a big assumption. And that citizens are able and want to participate in this exercise. They might have other things to do. They might need to simply earn a daily wage and can't spend time in these sort of meetings. And that together, that these interface meetings actually are productive and not confrontational, or in the end, maybe people actually go away from that after having had a big fight with each other. So then you obviously don't. So the trick is to have a very good facilitation here by an NGO or by somebody who is used to doing these meetings, so that people actually come out with more collaboration and more trust. So very quickly, I don't have much time left. Just to talk about a case study or two case studies I did in Morocco, which is the country I know best, because I've also done my PhD research on it, on decentralization there. But you can see, and this is a graph from a handbook on actually published by the World Bank, on the fact that Morocco is quite corrupt in both education and health. And health, it's even the most corrupt in all of the MENA, Middle East, North Africa economies. So there's a lot of work to be done. This is a school that I visited. This is a health center interface meetings, and I got these pictures from CARE Morocco, which was the NGO I worked with to do this research. And so I don't have much time to go into the methodology and any of that, but some selected findings. People basically told me, community members told me that we are now taught to approach the state, or so we can communicate with it rather than shouting or complaining. So we sort of know how to talk to the government or the service providers, and that's already one first step, I guess. Some small improvements in service provision, like there was a cleaner, or that there was a security guard, or there were some corrupt practices along medicine distribution, which was stopped in some of these health posts. But unfortunately, the action plans were not officially concluded with commitment from the budget holder. And I don't have time to go into the India example, but I also did a little bit of research in Bangalore and India, and there this commitment was much more present. But what I found interesting, and for you maybe relevant as lawyers, is that this absence of entitlements or rights-based language, nobody was talking in. I didn't see this in any of the project documentation or with the people on the ground. So the next research trip that I made was actually about finding out in the capital city, in Rabat, going around the ministries, like what are these service standards, what are people entitled to, and that was also quite a struggle. So and that, of course, you can think, why is that the case? Is it because the government doesn't want citizens to know the rights that they have? Is it because they don't exist? Yeah, these are interesting things to study. And this is another school I visited in the High Atlas Mountains near Marrakesh, where they actually did improve these toilets on the bottom left. They only had 2 toilets for, I think, 900 students, and in the end they managed to have a lot more. But it was actually funded by maybe you know this person, Richard Branson, who's a billionaire, I think, one of the richest people in the world, from Virgin Atlantic Airlines, and he has a hotel there, a very nice 5-star hotel. So the people living there actually were in the Parents Association. They had their kids in the school. Okay, my time is up. I'll wrap up quickly. And so they had a charity. The pilots from Virgin Atlantic made a charity walk, a hike, and they collected the money to be able to pay for these toilets. So actually, what I found out is that this actually had nothing to do with the World Bank project, with the whole scorecard initiative. This was actually something separate. But I was sent there to look into a success story. So basically, I mean, I think the only thing you need to maybe look at is the, and I apologize for too much text on the slide, is at the bottom where, you know, is actually the state is let off the hook in a way, because everybody claimed this as a success story, but the state didn't do much. It didn't do anything at all. In fact, the money came from private funders. So my selected conclusions is that, yes, this is a long-term transformation. The social accountability initiatives, they need sort of having a 1-year project is not going to bring about much change, but they are the beginnings of community empowerment, which might, you know, in the future, if they're sustained, could lead to some transformational impact. But really, shouldn't we maybe look at these entitlements and raising awareness around them as a precondition for successful social accountability? And maybe that's where you come in as legal professionals, from some of you, sort of to help me understand this, and then tell me maybe where can I find these entitlements apart from the Constitution? You know, where are they really documented? And again, some other questions about, you know, are they meant to complement formal processes or substitute them? What about other accountability institutions like ombudsmen, like auditors? How do these initiatives work together with those? And right now I'm starting up another project, a very small one, but with local researchers in Lebanon, Tunisia, and Morocco, where we are going to document some of these case studies, not these ones, but new ones on local notions of accountability. What does it actually mean for people on the ground, and how do they interact with these donor funded models, and does it actually mean anything to them? And there's a working paper which came out recently, which I co-authored, which maybe you would like to look at, and I think some students have already engaged with. So that's it. I think I can stop sharing. I hope that you could see and hear me well. And that it at least gave you some idea of what I'm up to. So I don't know if there are any questions in the chat or anywhere else. Otherwise, we keep the substantive ones for. Oh yeah, here Dylan asked, what incentives are there for state leaders and officials to consent and participate instead of using authoritarian habits of co-optation? Yes, exactly. That's a great question. We will get back to that maybe in the Q&A. But that's something. There's a whole big answer behind that, I guess, with the assumption on the Weberian state and whether it exists or not in those environments. But thanks, I'll keep that in mind and hopefully come back to that. Let's continue on our program, which means that I will have the pleasure to give the floor to Anna, Dr. Anna Marczak, to talk about the multi-regulation of policing humanitarian or human emergencies. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Sylvia. It's a little bit of a long title, and apologies for this, but I just wanted to stress the connection to the research group, and as well as the methodology and the foundation of the research. But let me just quickly share the presentation. first. I believe you can see it now, right? Yes, great.
Yeah,
okay,
great.
I can see some nodding. Okay, so I also have usually issues with time management, so I'm gonna jump in straight away. So I'm Anna Maczek. I'm a lecturer in comparative criminology in the Safety and Security Management Studies program at THUAS. And this particular research, I believe it's a new addition to the center and the research group on multi-level regulation. It connects with one of my research interests, which is public trust and confidence in law enforcement and the police, among some other interests, but this is like a revival of something that I started working on and exploring some time ago. But with this research is particularly tailored to 3 case studies and in relation to a specific issue, which is a human emergency, but there are different types of human emergency. But what's the main objective of this research is to answer a couple of questions, but the main one is basically how the police and other actors who share policing tasks respond to human emergencies in this particular cases in different sociopolitical, cultural, and economic contexts. And how this multi-agency work under so much pressure pans out. What are the success stories? What are the obstacles and challenges? But I will come back to this in a second. I first want to very briefly outline the context of each case study to highlight what are the benefits of looking into these cases. So the first one is Hurricane Katrina, which was a destructive tropical cyclone that hit the southern part of the US in 2005. One of the most affected regions in the US was New Orleans, was the city of New Orleans and its surroundings. When it comes to the actual city, approximately 80% of the city was flooded as a result of the cyclone. Of course, there were a number of different losses and damages. So one of them was a massive substantial loss to the policing infrastructure, and which affected how the police responded to the particular emergency. One of the first tasks for the police when dealing with any emergency is, of course, to redesign the repertoire of policing tasks. So they have to minimize the typical law enforcement, law and order tasks in order to respond to the emergency. For instance, one of this, let's say, a new task is search and rescue operations. However, in this case, this was conducted in a highly difficult situation because of the damage to the police infrastructure, but also to the response on the part of the police itself. There was the headquarters of the police in the city was massively damaged, but also many, approximately 200 of on-duty police officers abandoned their posts. The entire situation was exacerbated by a very difficult relationship with the public, with the local communities on the ground, which was a long-standing, which can be characterized as a long-standing significant distrust of the public towards the police. Very difficult relationship with between the police and local communities, especially ethnic minorities. Again, on top of that, there was also a very unfavorable media representation of the situation, depicting or framing the situation or the situation in the city as a state of anomie or chaos. There was some assistance coming from other institutions, organizations, other places in the US. The police was assisted by federal agencies, by the army, but also by private security agencies, which played a prominent role in managing and responding to the crisis. For example, many local business owners decided to hire private security companies to protect their businesses and their properties in response to this chaos, but also a rise of looting and riots. The extent of this involvement on the part of private security was so much that there was actually quite substantial spike in the number of private security companies as a result of this situation. The police response was heavily criticized as much as the nature of the multi-agency collaboration, which links with the overall critique of the American police, the tendency to be over-militarized and to use overly excessive tools and measures. A slightly different context is the context of the outbreak of the Ebola epidemic in Western Africa between 2013 and 2016. What's interesting in this context is that actually we deal with a different emergency example, but also we deal with, in fact, 3 most affected countries. It's Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. Here, what's also interesting is that the police, as a first responder, as an emergency service, gets lost in translation a little bit. It's mostly depicted as one of many security actors. It's rarely mentioned in terms of overall assessment of the situation. It's also criticized for being inefficient, for being not well prepared to handle the emergency, but it's usually depicted as part of a bigger picture that the training that the police in those countries received as some sort of international collaboration assistance coming from international bodies and actors was basically inefficient. This is also very frequently linked with the situation prior to the emergency, with the fact that these countries are defined as post-conflict countries, and the epidemic itself triggered these memories and experiences of previous conflicts, which in fact also impacted on the efficiency of this response on the part of the police. What's also interesting, like in the context of the US, we also see multi-agency collaboration and assistance coming from different actors to share this policing tasks. Again, these are this is military, domestic military, or international or foreign military service. Coming from countries such as the US, the UK, Germany, Canada, or France. But also, at least this is better described, we also see the involvement of local communities, of local leaders, religious, spiritual leaders, and healthcare providers. And actually a very good, interesting literature informing the issue around the police and policing comes from actually the medical field, especially the institutions such as Red Cross and Médecins Sans Frontières have extensively described the situation as it was in the response to the epidemic, criticizing mostly that there was too much of security and military mindset behind the response, which was not necessary, that when we deal with a human emergency, we should probably apply more the mindset of care rather than of force or coerce. But nonetheless, there is a heavy involvement of international actors and influences or attempts to influence the situation in those countries by these actors. Quite prominent event in this situation is also the fact that the UN Security Council declared Ebola not only as a humanitarian emergency, but also as a security threat to the region, to the international peace and security. This is, like in the US, this is an example that shows a very low trust setting, an extremely difficult relationship between the police or security actors at large and local communities. Again, that's because that's explained in the literature. It's because of the prior experiences and memories, war memories, which really became huge obstacles to implement safety and security measures when dealing with the epidemic. Then the third example comes from Japan, which is unlike the other two. Here, the type of emergency, actually we have two emergencies closely interconnected. We have a very powerful earthquake which occurred off the east coast of Japan's Tohoku region that triggered a tsunami. So in fact, the Japanese police had to police or respond to two emergency situations. What is prominent about this case is that as a result of this, let's say, double human emergency situation, the biggest effect of the earthquake was observed in relation to the meltdown of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. That, of course, heightened the concerns of the government, and the appropriate steps were undertaken. Similarly to the other cases, we also see the involvement of other actors. We see the involvement of the army. We see the involvement of police forces coming from different regions of Japan, and also some international assistance. But what we see, which is quite unique to this particular case study, is a different relationship between the police and the public, which was more collaborative, cooperative, unlike in the US context. And that is closely related to the policing model and policing tradition in Japan. So that's in a nutshell, very briefly discussed three case studies that they form the basis of this research. We are at the very still early stage of doing this research, so this is just an overview. However, what guides this research? So what we see in relation to three cases is a number of multiple actors. But what's the objective of the research is to see the level of intervention or involvement of these actors in order to respond to the emergency. And the notion of regulation, which I believe is going to be very difficult, because there is a very heated and interesting debate about how this can be actually regulated. This is such a multi-agency collaboration when we deal with a human emergency. So the task for the research is to identify these actors, who apart from the police is involved, who else apart from the police is involved in policing, sharing policing tasks, and what's the nature of this involvement, at what point they come to, they join this collaborative efforts, and again, how this is, what kind of level of intervention this represents. Is it local, is it domestic, international? So we want to observe a certain interplay on both levels, horizontally and vertically, between these actors and the collaboration, which we believe that in relation to these three different contexts, sociopolitical, economic, cultural contexts, will play out differently. And a number of factors that will that do impact on this interplay. So depending on the police tradition, policing model in a certain country, management model of the police, we would receive different results or conclusions at the end of the project. But not only this, what else is important to look into is exactly the relationship between the public and the police and other actors, but also the state of democracy, the media representation of crises, the history of militarization, or maybe overly militarization of policing tasks, etc. What guides, what kind of theory or theoretical framework guides this research is coming from a quite rich scholarship on a concept that is called plural policing, which in essence says that the police is no longer a sole provider of safety and security, is no longer a sole provider of policing. There is a range of actors, and that is connected to the fact that we live in a globalized world. We function in networked structures of our society. So it's, in a way, it's a natural outcome of how the world has changed. But what is interesting is to see how this can impact on quite valid points that we ask when we discuss the role of the police in society, which is the notion of legitimacy and accountability. So we know that the police have to be accountable, but whether other actors remain at the same level, where they also are accountable, just like the police is. And if something goes wrong, basically who should be responsible for rectifying the situation, for providing restoration of the damage. You can see on the slide also the exact formulation of our research questions and the methodology that we apply in the study is a case study approach. Right now we are finishing a scoping phase of this research, which means gathering literature, and I believe that soon we will start also conducting some in-depth interviews. And this is my final slide, which is to say thank you for listening to this very short presentation, and to say that I conduct this project along with one of our SSMS students, who is also a research assistant to this project, Dylan Ashmore, and we published a very short article, blog article outlining this theoretical premise behind this research. And recently, I also participated in a podcast discussion with a colleague from Leiden to link our research projects with broader themes related to global governance as well. I hope I managed to say everything that I believed was quite important about this research within 10 minutes. I'm sorry if I if that was a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you failed on that count. I think by about 6 minutes over time, but I didn't want to stop you because it was really fascinating, and yeah, thank you so much for this. I think it was a great illustration of what Barbara said earlier about the focus of the Center of Expertise on different actors and practices, and so thank you so much. That's really yeah, exciting to hear all of this. And yeah, let's move on maybe swiftly then. And I did check the chat, and there's no question for you at the moment in terms of clarification, so I think we can just move on to Tolgan and his presentation. Tolgan Robin, senior lecturer at in European Studies. I could answer Dylan's question, I guess. Yeah, shall I do that in the meantime? Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a cost-benefit analysis in the end for those regimes, right? Whether it's cheaper for them to provide adequate services and involve citizens, and yeah, and doing so, or whether they want to keep the police force sort of yeah, and keep building that up to be able to suppress people. And of course, co-optation also has a cost in the sense that you buy off certain people. I mean, you provide them with certain elites, you know, with more services, and you rely on them to keep their followers in a way quiet. So I think in the end, yeah, I don't really have an answer. I think it's every regime or every maybe ministry even will make their sort of decision. I think it's also a question of mindset, of changing of people at in these service providers, changing their minds and being more familiar with social justice ideas, and that, you know, every citizen should have equal rights to these services, and it should not be a privilege for only a some, and that actually they can benefit from getting feedback because it will help them do a better job. Of course, that has to be rewarded then by those higher up in the ministry. Like, if you do a better job, you should also maybe then get promotions, or you should. So it is a change, and it's a change of mindset. It's a change of getting away, I think, from the authoritarian mindset to a more social justice oriented, human rights oriented, global sustainable development goals. So yeah, that's, I think, all I can say. It's not probably a very satisfactory answer, but I think it, yeah, but I'm happy to have a discussion on this. I don't know if you want to come in. Okay, you're saying it was interesting, so that's good. Happy to talk more. Tolgan is hopefully back. Let's see. Yeah, he's logged in, and we can see you. Great.
Yes, it was the browser. I'm very sorry. Yeah,
no problem.
The browser. Yeah, it was okay. This helps. But I cannot see the share button.
It's below on the middle below, after stop video behind it and breakout sessions.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. To passing. Let me see. Yeah, should be this one.
Yeah.
Can you see it now? Yeah.
Yeah, full Yeah, excellent, great, thank you, wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, very sorry about this disturbance. Yeah, my presentation will be on triple helix collaboration in The Hague. And I'm sharing this with you because I'm in a project, and I will tell you about the project, and also I'm setting up a lab on this. So also thanks to Barbara to give me this opportunity. But it's, I hope you forgive me. It's all in progress. Actually, it's starting. Yeah, so it's really fresh. Okay, first about The Hague. This is nothing new to you, of course. So The Hague is the international city of peace and justice, and it has a vast international infrastructure with all the multinationals, embassies, NGOs, all the EU international organizations. It also has all these renowned clusters. You all will be familiar with the security delta, and also the new legal and policy cluster, which is currently in a build-up phase, which is not only a dispute resolution between states, but also between companies and states, and companies versus companies. So these are all these big, so to say, high-end clusters within The Hague and all these big organizations. And on the other hand, we have the SMEs. Yeah, of course, there's this impact city cluster with all these startups and scale-ups on sustainable business, for instance, and also on social enterprises. And on the other hand, we have the classic SMEs, which could be all. So it's very broad. We have the service SMEs, but also the SMEs in the producing area, which are by definition export oriented. We all know all the greenhouse industry in the so-called Westland, which are by definition export oriented. And a lot of focus is towards these high-end clusters and towards startups and scale-ups. But the classic SMEs, yeah, they are falling between all these categories. And there are some initiatives to help them too, and to guide them. There was a trajectory on Germany, led by the municipality and the German-Dutch Chamber of Commerce, which we hooked up to. And based from that, a new initiative emerged, the so-called MKB deal, Internationaal Ondernemen. In English, the SME deal, so the small and middle-sized enterprises. So there was this deal led by the municipality. And here it's also funded by the Dutch Ministry of Economics and Climate. And this is part of a range of, I think, 13 SME deals throughout the country, throughout the Netherlands, to really support local initiatives. And in The Hague, because of its international nature, they chose to go for the support of SMEs who want to export. And they didn't choose this randomly. Yeah, so and this is done because I will show you in the next slide on this, because SMEs, and then we'll return to the previous slide, because SMEs are the backbone of the local economy. Yeah? So it's really these international focused SMEs who are the most resilient, who are future-proof, who create new jobs. And you see there, so this is really a fascinating area where you have a mixture of SMEs and all these international contacts who attract also new international employees and also these international ties. So the strength of these small organizations basically is really powerful, because together they create an enormous force for The Hague, for the local economy, but also for the diversity, because they attract so many new people, so many new employees, so many new jobs. So that's why we have created the SME deal. And on this slide you can see the structure of this deal, so the governance structure, and it's led by the municipality, so Gemeente Den Haag, the city of The Hague, and together with the two contractors, so to say, the Hague Business Agency and Innovation Quarter, and a lot of major economic players in The Hague. They've created this deal. And the purpose is to work together. So it's led by the municipality, and it's structured by the Hague Business Agency and Innovation Court. But you can see here that there's a diversity of organizations who are in this project together. And also THUAS is participating. I'm in this partner board because they've asked me to participate in this because of the work for the German trajectory, and this SME deal focuses on Germany and on the UK because of Brexit, and in Germany because a lot of SMEs who will start with export will focus on nearby markets, mainly on Germany, because it's the biggest economy in Europe. It's nearby. It's relatively easy. And it's such a vast market. So together with all these organizations, we try to guide, we try to support businesses in The Hague to export. And like I said, it's a joint effort, and this makes it really interesting. So it's not only giving them the money, but it's also to give them advice and guidance, to build a network, to build a platform where they can meet each other and where they can meet their peers. So companies who are already exporting, to create events. And this is also why they really want THUAS on board, because students and this knowledge organization can create extra added value to them. Yeah? So events, for instance, but also students who can give advice to companies, who can work on building platforms, who can work on marketing. So a lot of possibilities. And actually, this is this triple helix, and I've placed THUAS at the top. But you can also see it differently, where actually you should place the municipality on the top. Okay, but for this occasion, I just placed THUAS at the top here. And we've created this new entity, the German desk, to really, and I will show you in a minute, to answer the question of SMEs in The Hague on export, for instance. Yeah. So you have us, THUAS, and the German desk is more or less a contact point for these SMEs. But it can also mean that we can guide them, that we can help them by contacting other departments, or other programs, or other research groups, or so. We can help them, and we are their contact point for THUAS. So it's a mixture of so this triple helix is actually a combination of knowledge, of companies, and of the municipality, who give the funds, who give the structure, who guide this collaboration. We, in this sense, would be the brains, and the SMEs who give us the assignments. And this is why we've started this lab idea, to really connect education to the SMEs. Yeah, and this might start with SMEs, but also it's possible that organizations ask their questions. And so our questions are how to connect and really to valorize, to give extra knowledge to companies who want to export, who want to have guidance. Therefore, we also started with a minor. It's not only a desk where we work on questions, but it's also student projects, for instance. So the students should be at the center of our guidance, of our advice. Like I said, to offer some kind of a portal to external partners, which by definition are SMEs, but who also might be NGOs or public organizations, and internally to really work as a contact point for them too. So if they're in need of contacts, of assignments, then the German desk might here be help for them. Both are in progress. Yeah? So the minor will start in September, but the portals are in progress. And this idea, I've discussed this with the municipality and with Innovation Quarter, this idea of being some kind of a contact point for them to really maybe work as a situation room where students, lecturers, SMEs, partners within the SME deal can meet online, but hopefully soon offline in real life. This is really appealing to Innovation Quarter and to the municipality to really get in contact with each other. So therefore, the goal of this desk is to really provide valorization. Yeah? So it could be guidance, advice for organizations, for SMEs in The Hague, so to really make it locally. And like I said, it might be SMEs, but also public organizations or societal initiatives. We also are in talks with the University of Applied Science of Bielefeld, who are really find this initiative really interesting, because for students, we also want to focus on their behavior. So this idea of getting in contact with practitioners, with companies, with organizations, and how to behave with them, to be able to get into a conversation with them, to ask questions, to listen. This is really appealing also to the University of Applied Sciences of Bielefeld, which is in Germany, and they might want to mirror this. And we want to bring this valorization by the involvement of students, lecturers, researchers, to give them assignments, internships with the minor, maybe research assignments, so to really work on behalf of SMEs and all kinds of local organizations within The Hague. And actually, this is multi-level governance in practice. So together to build networks, to build platforms, to create demand-driven here, and this now is starting to move, starting to build up, but it really took a lot of time and effort to get there. So I had to get in contact a lot with all of these actors, with the municipalities, to talk to Innovation Quarter, to really work on the trust building, and also to align with their policies and strategies. And it's also a process of small wins. You know, sometimes you have to a joint goals, but also could also just be a knowledge exchange, or a different perspectives, which is really interesting for a university or a university of applied science. So so all in all, it's really to invest in relations here. And also it was and is still a really an iterative and an incremental process. So it's a process of jumps and bumps, and it's interesting to see how to connect to all these major actors. Therefore, it's one of the assignments for me also to create some kind of a toolbox from this. So how will you get in contact with all these major actors in a city? And of course, the local context and the local demand really plays a role. So it might be different in another city, but how is this local toolbox for collaboration with all these major economic actors, how does that work, and what would be a best practice here to also show to others, to disseminate this knowledge for others. I really don't know how much time this took. I hope.
Yeah, time is up already for a few minutes, but I thought you were really nearing the end, so I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yes, please do so. Yes, sorry, I got all enthusiastic about this. So, if you're interested, maybe for students in the minor, or to be working together with the desk, just send me an email. And we also have created a LinkedIn site for this. So if you're interested, maybe there are questions now, or otherwise, send me an email or send me a LinkedIn message. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, you can maybe stop sharing and then we can see each other again. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. It was a really nice example of this collaboration in practice, and at the local level, but also crossing borders, and also different the business sector, which we haven't maybe looked at yet. So thank you for that. And I think we can open it up right away to questions and comments. And maybe again, Johanna, you can help us a little bit on monitoring what's happening on the YouTube live stream chat box, because I think in our chat box we don't have any new questions. In the WebEx one. Okay, no questions on YouTube yet. Okay, maybe it will come. But in the meantime, I do have questions for Tolgan, but I don't know if, and I know you have to also, well, we have time. You have to leave a bit earlier, but we have time, 15 minutes. So shall I ask my question, or is anybody else? I was wondering about the sort of what is the main purpose of this triple helix? Is it, I mean, because you mentioned added value, sort of for whom exactly? Is it just to increase the trade? Is it to match the supply and the demand better from these different companies and their market in Germany, or their partners in Germany? Is it B2B? I'm trying to understand a little bit more. What's the added value of this collaboration? Thank you.
Yeah, but this is a model. There are also more complex models on this. This is the simplest model, basically. But you also have this quadruple or quintuple helix, and to add yet other fields. But this is really to help the different actors with all their own needs and demands, and basically sorry, this is some audio problems here. I hear an echo, but I think it's gone now. To be complementary to each other. So where the SMEs have their demands and their questions, the municipality or innovation quarter have the funds or the structure, and we, the university, can help by supplying interns, for instance, or to conduct a research, or to do an assignment for those companies. So we are basically complementary to each other, and you can add this model by also add the environment, society, for instance. So you could say, hey, this is on behalf of the city of The Hague, not only the SMEs but for the whole city. So therefore, this complementary model. So you also saw these arrows. So we work not only for ourselves, but we work for all actors in the model. If this makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. No, it does. Yeah. Maybe just a very quick follow-up question. Which sectors are these companies mostly in? I mean, is it any SMEs or?
That's the interesting part. This deal has been started by the 1st of January, but we're now in talks to really start it by September. So as the minor starts, but they're now in the application phase. So I will also post some messages on this. So they are now trying to engage with the SMEs, to attract the SMEs, and then a selection phase will start. There are two possibilities that they're all over the place. So a cross-sectoral, which probably will be the case, but also it might be that there will be some kind of a natural selection that there will be a focus on sustainability, for instance, but probably it will be a cross-sectoral. And if the minor starts, then we will see how we will guide the company. So either one by one, or we will focus on a sector, for instance.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks a lot. Yeah, we're all curious to hear more about it by September. Yeah. Who else would like to ask a question? Or yeah, Christine.
Yeah, maybe a quick question to Anna. I find your project fascinating, as Sylvia said, and I just would like to know, how did you pick your 3 case study?
So basically, there were a number of factors I took into consideration. First of all, I wanted to have a case study with a different type of emergency to see differences, and I think we will see some differences in terms of policing responses and how the relationship is like in relation to different types of emergency. Then I wanted these countries to be different when we look at the state of democracy, basically, because that's another issue, right? So when we deal with a country that is believed to be highly democratic, or at least doing well on the democracy agenda, and when we have, let's say, countries that they are commonly described in the literature as weak countries. And then basically I wanted to look into the Japanese case because of it's a little explored context in the field of criminology, and I think there is a lot to learn from it. For instance, when it comes to the notion of community policing in Japan, this is what we know about community policing. We mainly know this from the studies conducted in the US or in the UK, in general in Anglo-Saxon countries, and I think there is a lot to learn from how the Japanese from the Japanese history of community policing. So that is the case study that I believe will be the most challenging one when it comes to getting access to interviewees and finding additional information, but I think it will be probably the most rewarding. So basically these were the 2 crucial factors, different types of emergencies, different levels of, let's say, of democratic developments, and then also different models of policing. So in the US, we know a lot about the police and style of policing, again, because there is a very rich literature. In the case of these countries affected by the Ebola epidemic, again, this is an interesting case where the police doesn't come across as a prominent actor in any ways, although, let's say, there were some initiatives and funds invested into changing this situation. And then it's a different story about Japan. Again, there is a long tradition of policing of a particular type, but again, it's, I think, little known to the audience still in Europe. So that was my idea, my let's say, yes, my ideology behind it. But it's a good question because that's a very important question to ask when you also say that you do a case study. Yes, the selection of cases is very important.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Thank you all for your great presentations. I have a question to Torgen first, although I have a question to all of you, but I will try to be concise. So Torgen, I was wondering for this toolkit and best practices, because I think we all could learn from this triple helix model in our research. We all, especially in Applied Science University, want to connect students with practitioners and the government in a way. But I was wondering about the balance of power in this. How do you find it? I mean, of course, it's a starting project, but I always think that, of course, it's quite difficult to engage SMEs and to engage students at equal footing. So how do you find this problem of balance of power addressed, and how do you make sure that students well, also a little bit about the ethics of research of students in this triple helix.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. It's a very good question. It's like I said, this is an iterative process where we have to find out ourselves. I have been in talks with Innovation Quadra on this because they do this part of the trajectory. So we have to find out, but what we want to do within the minor is really to create a safe space for students. So we've talked about this. I don't know if this fully answers your question, but we are aware of this. So one of the answers we think we have is to really foster peer feedback here. So all the research assignments, although they have to be selected, will be more or less within the same framework. And we want to really focus on peer feedback within the minor, so students giving each other feedback, but also feedback from the lecturers. The lecturers who are doing this minor have. So I have a background in advising companies. We have a consultant, so we are quite familiar with this type of work, and so we want to give them feedback, but also this peer feedback where students compare their answers and compare their research. Does this answer more or less your question?
Yes, well, it's very difficult in a way that we are now starting this Trust Mediators project, and we are also involving students. It's more like a citizen science research. So, of course, there are different ethical concerns there, but there is always the concern. Yes, I was wondering how you are solving this, and I think it's work in progress, and we will be very much, I will be willing to learn also from your solutions. So I'm looking forward to this toolkit, and good luck with the minor. And maybe also to ask, because I think the majority of students was watching us, whether you could, rather than researchers, so maybe if Christine could tell us a little bit more about the second edition of the Diversity Book Club, which sounds like a great initiative.
Well, I cannot tell that much because it's still in progress in my head and how I want to set it up. But one thing I would like to do is that the first setup, I was helped a lot by the center. So thank you so much. And then your two student assistant also things. But maybe what I would like to move further to is to pick a few students and then make it a sort of core group of 2 or 3 students with me, which we would decide together, okay, which theme we want to address and which assigned reading we would like to discuss. So that's the setup I'm making now, to see like if I can find a few students who are really interested and engaged in the topic, and see how we move forward the next session.
Great. And Anna and Sylvia, are you maybe you could also let our students know how students could potentially get involved in your research?
Yes, so I already work with one of our students, so I think he's already in the audience. So he could also, if he wants to, he could say what his role involves. But it's he assists me in the capacity of a research assistant, and then I believe that I think once we enter the stage of the phase of conducting interviews, that would be also a very important stage where students could get engaged and gain experience in well, preparing for face-to-face or online interview, preparing an in-depth interview guide, conducting or assisting to conduct such an interview, and then transcribing the interview, and of course analyzing the transcripts. So that is the next stage of the project that I have in mind, and I could welcome students to get involved in this phase.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think for the social accountability project, I know that the students involved in the global challenges in 365 days, I think, have used the working paper as to see whether they can apply the problem-based learning methodology that they want to apply. They tried it out, I think, so I will meet them tomorrow and find out how that went, because it was a sort of a research agenda, which I was very happy when they were excited or interested to use it for this project. So that's one way, and of course, eventually, I think students can help a lot also when it comes to discussing, once we have the findings, discussing them, and we present them, to ask us critical questions, to really dig deep, to help us sharpen our analysis. I think also when it comes to disseminating the findings, and of course, because they also have networks, students, which we would like to benefit from. So it's not just us providing networks to them, but hopefully also students to us. That's one way, and maybe I can just plug in the last minute, or Tolgan maybe has to leave, so I don't know if you want to just wave goodbye to you, but I wanted to, I will say goodbye to Tolgan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all. I have to go to the next one, but thank you. It was really inspiring. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. Bye. Just to plug in the Heatwave project, which you mentioned, Barbara, at the beginning, because there we will also would like to see some student involvement, because it's a project that looks at, just in a nutshell, at the effects of heat waves on vulnerable populations in The Hague. And just yesterday or today we posted some social media posts and also on our website, so you can see more about it. But there will be a research launch on the 7th of June. I can also mention that on this project. So there we will have surveys that basically we're working on the design right now, to see how vulnerable populations, and mainly these are elderly people living alone at home in The Hague, because they are not protected by a heat protocol in any of these institutional settings. So making sure they drink enough, making sure they take care of themselves, and because that's why the Netherlands was classified a disaster country in the World Disaster Report some years ago, and even last year I think there were 3,000 people who died, not from corona but actually from heat. So it is a disaster happening behind the front door, and we want to measure these effects and see, of course, how the municipality can better communicate with citizens to make sure that they take precautions, but also what the municipality can still do to help them. And so in that context, we will appeal to students to help us probably with surveys. We have to get the ethics right, and we have to take all of that into account, but I do think that we need man and woman power in the summer when it's hot to go around and administer the survey. So that's maybe one concrete way as well in which they can be involved. But this will be announced, of course, and we will think of the logistics once we have our sample size well defined. We know how many people we need and how to do it. But I hope that answers your question, and maybe other than that, we could maybe go to the closing part, if that's okay with everybody. I don't see any more questions. I'm sure Johanna would have told us probably by now if there were more questions. So maybe Barbara, you can close the event for us, and thank you.
With pleasure, although it was a real pleasure also to listen to your presentations. I think we should do this more often to learn from one another and find opportunities for collaboration also within the center, which of course we're doing, but it's always nice to hear more about other research and work in progress. And I think that all of us had a light bulb somewhere there when the presentations were on. So thank you very much for that. And maybe just for the closing, I think it's fair to say that the center is looking for a new project, for new collaborations. We're interested in building consortia. And as we mentioned, we work with people who are directly involved in global governance, so including professionals and future professionals. So if you are a student or a researcher or a professional who is interested in more applied approach to global challenges, feel free to email us at the gg@hhs.nl. It's a very easy email address that we will also include in the chat. And we also want to learn from you, basically, because it's our research agenda is quite flexible and should be responsive to the challenges and to the actual real-life problems of global governance. So we encourage everyone to contact us if you are interested in even smaller projects with us or getting some research experience as students. I'm sure there will be always something to help with. So feel free to just give us a shot. And we, of course, always are publishing quite frequently some vacancies for student assistants to and information about our projects. So I think that's it. And again, thank you very much for your presentations. And I wish you all a very nice and sunny afternoon.